So I just wanted to read a short article here from. It is actually from. Let's see, Yahoo News. It is from Yahoo News, but it seems to be from the Independent, I think. I believe that's a Canadian, UK. So that's a UK publication. This was published in, on behalf of the Independent, but in Yahoo News. And the title of the poll says, 2020 election poll, Joe Biden's lead shrinks to 0 against Bernie Sanders in critical Iowa. So let's check it out here. It says Joe Biden may be leading national polls among Democratic voters, but a new poll shows his dominance doesn't necessarily extend to Iowa. Mr. Biden is matched by Bernie Sanders in the state, a sharp drop from his 11-point lead in a separate poll last month. Both candidates can claim 24% support in the state, which will vote first in the nominating process next year. Mr. Biden and Mr. Sanders are followed in the new poll by several candidates with significant showings, including Pete Buttigieg, 14%, Elizabeth Warren, 12%, and Kamala Harris, 10%. Let's see here. It says, reading into the polls just a bit more, Mr. Biden has more to worry about than just Mr. Sanders, too. Mrs. Warren stands out as the most liked candidate in the race with a favorability rating at 78%. The top in the race, she is followed by Mr. Sanders, who is the next closest, 71%. That's actually not bad. Good news for Elizabeth Warren. Her favorability exceeds that of any other candidate in the race, and her name recognition is near universal, said principal pollster Jane Loria in a news release. She continued, in some states, we see a large spread between the frontrunners and the so-called second tier in the excitement barometer. But in Iowa, the candidates are all pretty tightly clustered. When we ask respondents to identify the 5 candidates, they're most excited about 50%. About 54% say Warren, followed by 53% Biden, 53% Harris, 49% Sanders, and 46% Buttigieg. The terrain looks much better for Mr. Biden when looking at the other states that follow close after Iowa. However, in New Hampshire, Mr. Biden beat Sanders 36% to 18%. In South Carolina, meanwhile, Mr. Biden recently got 46% compared to Mr. Sanders' 15%. But any fragility in Iowa could have real consequences for Mr. Biden's third presidential race. The state has outsized influence on the presidential nominating process, and a loss there would show potentially significant vulnerabilities for the former vice president. The Iowa starting line change research poll was released on Monday, and the Iowa caucuses will be held in January of 2020. This article, by the way, is from May 20th. So that's an interesting poll. Like I said before in the last segment, I don't really like to put too much emphasis on polls. I don't like to put, I don't really like to act like they're that concrete. Polls can change. They do. Polls change so quickly, so easily. A lot of times when poll says something, just like this poll, went from Bernie being down 11%, 11 points, now he's tied. So anything can happen in these polls. One statement you make, one debate you have, one, vote you make or something, it can change a lot of these things. But I mean, I think this definitely shows that Joe Biden he's not as strong of a contender as a lot of the mainstream media and all these establishment outlets and whatnot are trying to make him out to be. He's just, I think, and this is a case that many other people, I think even Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk has made about how Joe Biden he's kind of a placeholder for the Democratic Party now until somebody like, for example, Pete Buttigieg or Beto O'Rourke or Kamala Harris or maybe even Elizabeth Warren, until they start to gain a little bit more status, until they start to get more up in the polls. So Joe Biden is there until they get up there more, and that's only because Joe Biden is the most well known among all the different candidates. I mean, among the 24, I think now, 25, how much it is. Joe Biden is definitely the most well-known. I did not know Elizabeth Warren was that well known as much as this poll is claiming here. Now, at the same time, when it comes to Iowa, I mean, Iowa doesn't say everything, about race. A lot of people like to focus on, a lot of the mainstream media is always they're so obsessed about what's going on in Iowa, the Iowa caucus, Iowa. What are the Iowa polls saying? What are the Iowa, what is the Iowa? They have like straw polls, Iowa straw polls. What are those saying? What are but you never really know what that kind of stuff is going to say. You can never really assume that stuff is going to tell you exactly what you want to know. On top of the fact that in 2016, when Bernie Sanders ran for the first time, and he ran obviously against Hillary Clinton, the Hillary Clinton Bernie Sanders race in Iowa was extremely close. It was so close. It was like tight. Like I think it got to like they were like within 1%, I think it was. It was like I remember the whole time and watching it and covering it, or not covering, but I was definitely watching it and following it. And like Bernie ended up losing barely. He lost by a sliver of a percent. It was like 1 or like less, and it was no more than 2% for sure. It was like 1.5% or something. But then obviously Bernie ended up losing, unfortunately, even though it was, obviously the primary was rigged, but he ended up losing the entire primary. So, I mean, rigging or not, the fact that the Iowa caucus was so close, and the fact that he still ended up losing in a rigged or not rigged primary, it just shows how much the Iowa caucus really doesn't mean that much. So whether Bernie Sanders is doing well or not in Iowa, I can't take a lot out of that. I can't really take that as something that's totally like, oh my God, that's groundbreaking, And like I said, anything can change with polls, But I think this definitely says a hell of a lot more about Biden than it says about Bernie, and it says about any of these other candidates. I'll get to the whole popularity thing or excitement thing in a second. But it definitely says a lot more about Biden than it says about Bernie, because when it comes to Joe Biden, like I said, I think a lot of the Democratic, voters out there that are just in the Democratic Party, the loyalists and the strategists and all those people, they're relying on Joe Biden to be the front runner until somebody else can take over. Because remember, in 2016, the whole narrative was we don't want a woman, we don't want a white man to run, we don't want a white man to become president. We can't stand that, because they said that about Bernie. So they would say that about Bernie. They said we can't have a old white man running for president. And then all the time I'm seeing on social media, old white man, we can't have an old white man. And to be fair, there are a decent chunk of Dem loyalists out there who are just like, yeah, I can't stand Joe Biden either. So, but it's just funny when the people that are so pro-Biden, I guarantee you a lot of those people were anti-Bernie in 2016, and they're still anti-Bernie now. And the reason that they're anti-Bernie now and pro-Biden is because they can't stand that Bernie is so anti-establishment, and he's not a Democrat, and he's attacked other Democrats for legitimate reasons, which to them doesn't matter. He went after a Democrat, they hate him. So, but when it comes to these kind of polls, you can't rely on them too much. And you have to kind of again, not only do you have to take it with a grain of truth, but you have to kind of realize that there's something in between the lines to detect there, and to kind of look into and be like, so from what I'm getting, so as I'm trying to explain to you, what I'm getting out of that is the fact that Joe Biden doesn't have as much. I think in general, I don't think in Iowa, I don't think in New Hampshire, I'm just talking about in general, I don't think Joe Biden has enough people backing him. And I don't think he has enough support that is going to be able to get him over now maybe he might get the nomination, I don't know. Hillary Clinton got that too, barely, even though Bernie Sanders won, 43% of the vote, I think it was. Hillary won, I think, 56%. So, but I wouldn't trust Joe Biden's numbers to be that. I wouldn't expect Joe Biden's numbers to hang on like that, And I guarantee they won't. Whether it's Iowa and New Hampshire, you can go anywhere. Illinois, Florida, whoever, who knows? All these different states, New York, California, anywhere. So you can't trust these polls. You can't trust what's going to happen in the ultimate primary. It's all going to be up in the air, just like it was last time in 2016 between Hillary and Bernie. And that was at a time, I believe, was it just Hillary and Bernie? It might have been Martin O'Malley too. And he got like 1% or 2% probably. And it might have been, what's his name too, the other guy. What was that, Jim Webb, and then the guy, Lincoln Chafee, I think. So yeah, I mean, like these different people, they were all there. I don't think they affected the race all that much, but and they were all those other people were, all those other three that I mentioned, O'Malley, Webb, and Chafee, they were all just as establishment as Hillary was, although they had some decent positions that were better than Hillary, but they were just as establishment on a grand scale than she was, and Bernie was just, the establishment, crazy guy, basically. That's how he's looked at. But obviously people in Iowa liked him. But ultimately, you don't know if that's going to extend out to the whole Democratic primary process, every state. That's something that we're going to have to kind of wait and see. As I've said before, I think debates are going to have a huge effect on how Bernie Sanders is going to poll, how all these candidates are going to poll. I think it's going to make a big difference. And once Bernie can get in there, obviously, we'll see how he does. But if he can get in there and he does a good job, he gets his message out there and he stands out and, makes his message clear compared to what all these, like the last article I read about how, his ideas are supported by other Democrats. So he's not rare, and he's not, he's not different from any of the other people running. It's bullshit as usual, but yeah, but let's just see what happens. I'm going to be patient and wait to see what happens after the first debate. Definitely the first couple of debates, and after the first couple of debates, we'll be able to get a decent idea of where people are and who they support. Because that's the same exact thing that happened in 2016. After the first couple of debates, people decided to, people started to really notice what a fraud Hillary Clinton was and how Bernie Sanders was a force to be reckoned with. And even the people that can't stand Bernie Sanders, a lot of them acknowledge that he did a very good job in making up a lot of ground in that primary against Hillary and getting much closer than he would have, than a lot of people would have thought. By the way, he ended up winning 20, I believe it was 20, let me check it right now. I think Bernie ended up winning 23 of the primaries. Hillary won 34. I want to say. Let me just double check right now. Just a second. Let's see. So she won 2,842 delegates. He won 1,865 delegates. She won 34 states. He won 23 states. The popular vote total popular vote count was 16,000,009. His was 13,000,002. And the percentage was 55%. And his was 43%. So, yeah, it was, he got a hell of a lot closer than anybody would have expected, for sure. Now, when it comes to the other thing that was mentioned in the poll, in this article and in the poll, was the excitement level. So the excitement level, the excitement barometer. So again, just to reiterate, the excitement, the person people are most excited about is Elizabeth Warren at 54%, followed by Biden at 53%, Harris at 53%, Sanders at 49%, and Buttigieg at 46%. So let me just go down the line here. So when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, I think the main reason why she is more, she's kind of has that excitement behind her, I think is because she caters a lot to that establishment narrative, but at the same time pushes for, Wall Street reform and stuff like that, that a lot, I think a good chunk of Dem loyalists are going to go out there and be like, yeah, I'm in favor of some Wall Street reform. Some of them are going to be and they'll say whether they actually believe that, who knows? But they're going to come out and say, we need to regulate Wall Street. We need to do that. So, but in reality, they're not really pushing it for that much. They're going to do the same thing Obama did, talking about how, Wall Street does all these terrible things, but then he's not going to do shit at the end of the day. But when it comes to Warren, I think that's generally the excitement behind her. I think it's because of the fact that she is a Democrat, she is a woman, and she seems to be, she seems to have a close relationship with a lot of Democrats. I think she has a relatively close relationship with Hillary. She endorsed Hillary over Bernie Sanders in 2016. A lot of people remember that. So the fact that she did that, a lot of people see that as like, oh, okay, so maybe she's just like Hillary. So a lot of the establishment see, no, not going back to like, we're not going to talk about how like Clinton supporters are like super, Clinton supporters are like super, influential, like the last article I was talking about. But the fact that just kind of the establishment types, they'd be like, oh, okay, so that's good. Elizabeth Warren, she went out, she supported the pick that we wanted, so we can back her. It's okay. She's okay in that regard. But we're still a little worried that she might be, regulating Wall Street too much, but we'll work on her a little bit. That's basically, I think that's what they're thinking. I definitely do not understand the excitement behind Biden. The only thing I can accumulate that to, I would say, is because he was Obama's VP. He is supposedly liked by a lot of black voters. He is supposedly liked, as I detailed in an article last week, he is liked by a lot of members of the Congressional Black Caucus. So a lot of black voters are going to be like, yeah, the Joe Biden guy, he was the VP for Obama, so he must be awesome. So, and Obama was such a likable person, kind of in a personal way. So the fact that he chose Biden, it's like people trust that. The next one is not surprising. It's Kamala Harris. Now, a lot of the excitement behind Kamala Harris generally is because of the fact that A, she is a woman of color. B, she's young. C, she's in the state of California, which the Democrats love. They love the idea that California is, and that I'm from California. I'm lived in California. I was born here. I've lived here all my life. But at the end of the day, the state of California, when it comes to Democrats, they love it because it's all where all the Hollywood elites and all the stars and all the celebrities are. It's Hollywood. It's the glitz and glamour. We've got palm trees. We've got Beverly Hills. We've got Silicon Valley. We've got San Francisco. Nancy Pelosi is so loved in San Francisco, and so it's like, all these different figures that are in California. Currently our governor is Gavin Newsom. I guarantee you, Gavin Newsom is going to be somebody that's going to be running for president at some point in his political career. If not 2024, it's definitely going to be in 2028, because he's currently in his governor. Like term as governor. I think he just started to become governor, so he's got to obviously serve his terms. But based on what happens, he's either going to decide to serve until 2024 and then run for president, or to go to 2028. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Kamala, but so I think largely the fact that she's from California and she's involved with like a lot of like big donor celebrities and stuff, like Hollywood elitists and shit. So she's kind of a prized possession in that regard. But it's also the fact that she's gone after a lot of Trump officials in like different like committee hearings. She, I believe, went after Brett Kavanaugh pretty hard when he was doing his testimony to become a member of the Supreme Court, and then obviously he was accused of sexual harassment by Christine Blasey Ford, similar to the Clarence Thomas case when Anita Hill accused him. So I heard she went out hard after Kavanaugh. I'm sure she gone after hard against a lot of Trump officials. So a lot of people see that as like, yeah, this strong black woman of color, and technically she's not black. She's half Jamaican, half Indian. Not American Indian, but India. Because she's a woman of color and she's strong. She's like a prosecutor and attorney general, and she takes command and shit. So they kind of see her as like, I think a lot of people see Kamala Harris as like this Hillary Clinton character. They see her as like this younger, obviously minority version of Hillary Clinton. Whereas Hillary Clinton was like this bourgeois, elitist, rich, woman who's, been in politics forever, and she's commands all this energy and all this power and stuff, and it's it's just she's not good enough, But Harris, oh my gosh, she's wonderful. She's got all these attributes that I love, So, so I think that's largely the excitement behind her. Can't really think of anything else other than, like I said, woman of color, going after Trump officials, all that stuff. Being young, So, and then Bernie Sanders' excitement, I think a large part of it comes from the millennials. The fact that Bernie has a lot of millennial support, has a lot of support among I would say a decent amount of boomers, a lot of progressives, a lot of people that are, that are suffering as far as, going through, like, as millennials are, they're going through like student loan debt and tuition debt and everything. People that have like lost their health care, even under Obamacare, they're going to be supporters of Bernie Sanders. So they're going to be excited about that. The fact that, he fights against kind of all this imperialism and endless wars and stuff. He's done, he did obviously the War Powers Act. He used that to kind of declare the war in Yemen unconstitutional. And he raised the 50 minimum, the wages in Amazon and Disney to $15 an hour. So, like Bernie has definitely garnered a lot of excitement from that. The fact that, his policies are just, he's getting big crowds and everything wherever he goes. So that's a big deal. And those big crowds are definitely ignored by the mainstream media. The mainstream media they like to act like Bernie Sanders is not popular and not, loved by a bunch of fans. They couldn't ignore that in 2016 because when they would go to his rallies, they would see like, holy shit, all his rallies are so huge. But in reality, it's, they knew that was going to make him look too good, so they had to not cover it. So instead, they would cover Trump with an empty podium and stuff, and they would cover Hillary obviously a lot, give her a lot of coverage, whereas Bernie was ignored for the most part. But the excitement among Bernie Sanders is palpable, and it's a lot more prevalent than any other politician, in my opinion. Aside from what the polls want to say, so aside from what the mainstream media and Democratic loyalists and strategists and pundits want to say. And the final one is Pete Buttigieg. I would have to say the excitement behind Pete Buttigieg is very, very simple. It's the fact that he's gay and that he is young and he just kind of looks like that folksy, good young man. He kind of has that good young man kind of thing to him. Like nice young gentleman, nice young man. And he, brags about how he speaks 6 languages like Norwegian and shit. I think he speaks, I don't know what else he speaks. He probably speaks Spanish and Italian, French, who knows, a bunch of things. But Norwegian this is the one I've heard about him speaking and like how he's like showed it off the most. But I think that's largely what his excitement is about. It's definitely notable to see, by the way, that Beto O'Rourke, who people claim that Pete Buttigieg stole all his kind of popularity from, Beto O'Rourke is not considered very popular right now when it comes to not only the polls among just general popularity, but also excitement. So Beto O'Rourke is kind of he's kind of fallen off the wayside. I covered that in a segment last week, but yeah, it's he was talking about like a reintroduction. He's in like a reintroduction phase or reintroduction mode, whatever, and kind of a Beto 2.0 kind of thing. I don't know how that's going, but it doesn't seem to be going too well right now, according to this poll at least. So, but yeah, but that's largely what my view is on this poll. I'm trying to be objective as possible when covering it and giving my take. I'm not gonna, go out there and say, Bernie Sanders is the best out of this poll. In my opinion, he is obviously the best out of this poll, regardless of what the numbers say. But I mean, I'm just trying to give a kind of more of an objective breakdown as far as what I feel like has led to the results of this poll. Again, I don't like to take polls that seriously. I don't care, what it is. For the most part, I like to kind of take it with a grain of salt. But it is interesting, though, that when the polls are showing in favor of the more anti-establishment candidates, they're ignored. So when a poll is showed in favor of Bernie Sanders, when, like I was talking about a poll in the last segment about how Bernie Sanders is supported by, people of color, is supported by, Hispanics, is supported by, women even, whereas he's, not, but his lowest amount of support is among, whites and males, men. It's people ignore that. So whereas if there was a poll that showed he's loved by men, if Bernie Sanders was showed as loved by all men out there, then the media would be obsessing over that because that would be their best way of framing him as a sexist, because that's the narrative, and that's the narrative they want to push. They want to push Bernie Sanders as if he's some sort of sexist prick, and he's just like Trump. So the fact that he dared to have the nerve to go after Planned Parenthood and call them the establishment like he did in 2016, everybody thinks that he's anti-woman, and it's just a bunch of bullshit, obviously. But at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders is much more liked than a lot of people like to claim, and the media likes to ignore it. And I'm not going to ignore. That doesn't mean I'm going to ignore polls. I am definitely going to cover them like I'm covering this one, but I'm not going to consider them to be super credible and they mean so much. You have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to look at it, in a sense that it's just kind of like it said here, an excitement barometer. It's a barometer for what you can expect the top people to be. I expect all these people to be pretty high in the. To go pretty far in the thing, in the primary. I expect them to be considered the most, whereas all the others are just going to be kind of ignored, and they're just going to be thrown aside because nobody's going to take them seriously. Whereas these people are going to be a little bit more. They're going to be in the race, and they're going to be given much more attention by the media. So, and don't be surprised if some of them end up falling by the wayside, So I think somebody like Biden will fall off by the wayside. I think somebody like Buttigieg will kind of, he won't be able to gain as much steam as people expect. I think the people that are going to be up there the most are going to be, I don't know about Warren. Warren is a little bit of a wild card. Elizabeth Warren is a wild card because of the fact that, like I said before, she is supported by members of the establishment. She has had a lot of pro-establishment votes. But she's also, pushing for Wall Street reform, and then a lot of the top executives and donors and shit, they consider her to be she's in favor of socialist policies, even though she calls herself a capitalist to her core or whatever. So these are all things that she's catering to all the different sides, But a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters and progressives, like myself, we don't really trust her because we feel like she is being very opportunistic, and she has been very opportunistic. And she's even hired people from I think she hired a former spokesperson for Hillary Clinton to be her spokesperson or something, So it's she's doing stuff that's she's trying to play both sides so that she can make everybody happy, and then she feels like that's going to be her way to the nomination. So, and it could work, but I hope it's not. And I even think if Bernie Sanders, I have a fear that if Bernie Sanders ends up becoming the nominee, he might end up naming her his VP. I think he might actually do that. And I don't know if I support that. So unless she changes her positions a lot more, I'm going to be very worried about that. So anyway, to conclude, this Iowa poll, we'll see where it goes as far as, when, after we have the first debate and everything, we'll see what these Iowa voters start to think. They seem to be swayed by very small things that happen, whether it's a statement that's said or a debate or, some position somebody, one of the politicians takes, candidates takes. So we'll see where it goes from here. But just, my advice to you guys is just take every poll, with the least amount of credibility, basically. They're not all going to be accurate at this time of the primary. So just pump the brakes on it and see what happens after the first couple of debates.